This day also brings an opportunity for the young designers to have a heart-to-heart conversation with some eminent architects and designers present among us about a very prominent question. Can somebody tell me what's the question? Okay, the question is designing the practice. I would now like to invite and welcome our eminent guest for the panel discussion, please. Mr. Bhatt is the principal architect at Architecture Discipline, a Delhi-based multidisciplinary architecture practice founded in 2007. Their work is highly acclaimed and was listed in the Forbes Bold Club Top 30 under 45 Indian architects and designers in 2023, one among many other facilitations. Mr. Bhakat is a principal partner at Studio Cody, an award-winning multidisciplinary design studio based in New Delhi. They design physical and digital spaces for people to live, work, and play in. At Studio Cody, they understand and accept the conditions of the contemporary world and dare to think outside the box. They challenge convention and rethink the normal. Ms. Agarwal is the principal and co-founder at Studio IIAD. Working with a dedicated team, she has paved the growth roadmap for Studio IIAD, making it a pioneer in the discipline of corporate spaces, retail centers, luxury villas, and more. I would like to now request Mr. Anuj Mehta. So, sir is the principal architect at AMA with over 35 years of experience in designing housing, townships, institutional and educational buildings, as well as high-profile interiors. He is a respected academician as well as a prolific and highly successful practitioner. Sorry, it took me some time. Ms. Sairam is one of the 5 design principals at Studio Lotus, a multidisciplinary path-breaking architectural firm in India. Asha leads all design initiatives in the domain of experiential design and hospitality interiors. She works on creating cohesive design narratives and has a diverse portfolio of projects, including the redevelopment of mixed-use complex in Mumbai. We have a couple of our best students who've joined Studio Lotus. So welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Now, what I wanted to say is that this idea of the topic has come from the students. They say that you teach us design, how to construct, all of that we somehow get to know. But how do you operate? How do you operate in the real world? So the idea was that they have been asking us that, how do you operate in the profession? What are the do's, what are the don'ts? Of course, the question I think which all of us have tried to answer at some point is, how do you even start a practice? Which is always the sort of a speed bump, which somehow you sail across, which everybody will find their own ways. But then once you start a practice, how do you hold on to it? How do you make sure that it grows, it really nurtures? I mean, you nurture it in a manner where it grows and you don't fall out, basically. Another small thing I want to say, which I wrote to you all in the mail, is that, you see, we find, or rather I find, that, you know, when you want to get together and talk, the forum is not always a conducive one. You know, either it's a trade show or it's a very formal thing organized by the council, which, you know, I mean, you all know. I mean, we don't have to tell the students what happens there, but basically, the point is that an institution like ours can provide an academic space where the discussions can be more meaningful because it addresses the students and it addresses the faculty as well, so that we understand where we are trying to take the students and whether we are able to take them there or whatever. So I guess if the panelists are ready, we can start. Okay. Okay, so here, rapid fire questions like coffee with Karan. No, it's nothing like that. I'm going to try and make this as informal as possible. It's not going to be as if we are in IIC holding a panel discussion. So anybody can answer these basic questions. So when and why should one decide to set up one's own studio? A very basic question. When and why should you, I mean, how do you decide, or when should you set up your own studio?
You should think about starting your own studio the day you think you are ready to be an independent designer. The day you start feeling stifled in an office you're working, or you start feeling that this is not the expression I want, or maybe you're enjoying working in an office but you think that you've reached a stage where you've learned enough to branch out on your own. You know, that is the stage where you feel confident enough, the stage where you feel you can take on the challenges of running your own studio, start branching out on your own. So the confidence is the key word. You know, confidence in your own ability, confidence in what you've learned by working under someone, training under, working in different offices. It depends on you. You know, some people start off immediately also. So basically stems from that. The day you feel that you need an independent expression, the day you feel you are ready to fly, that's the day you start off your own office. Of course, no one prepares you for the complexities of running your own office. In these colleges, we are only taught how to design. No one's teaching you HR, no one's teaching you accounts, no one's teaching you legal stuff, no one's teaching you PR, no one's teaching you how to handle clients of various levels. You know, one day you might be dealing with a top industrialist, the other day you're talking to a mistri on the site or a carpenter. So you have to deal with this wide range of people. So you have to become an expert in all these by jumping into the deep end. It's like swimming. You jump into the deep end and you learn swimming. Hopefully. You have to be confident enough to jump.
So hopefully you learn swimming.
Yeah.
Would Akshat like to add something?
I think you have to spend some time understanding the essence and the skills that you're required for a fundamental job, which is to design, and then to communicate the design to deliver. I started a studio when I realized that, well, I was an incidental starter, and I started because I had too many differences of opinion with my partner, who was 20 years older than I was. And we'd been doing that together for 5 or 7 years.
I'm so sorry.
So I realized that I had too many things to say, and I had sort of been running a studio pretty much on my own for a while. And running a studio isn't a simple thing. It's not just about doing your primary job of design and communication, but it's got a lot more to do with handling people and being able to guide them, because often when you're working for someone, you're given a few tasks and you sort of slot yourself in with different levels of skill. So you have to set yourself up for very different challenges, and the financial challenge in this is actually the smallest challenge, because that you find ways to overcome quite easily. It's this ability to tell many other independent brains what to do and get them to align to what the aspirations of that particular project or studio are. So ensure that you have the requisite skills to deliver your primary job, and then for the long term you should have enough of a point of view to sustain you through the next few decades, and know that you have it in you to evolve as well, right? So learn, continue to read, continue to study other projects and do case studies and such.
Right? Would you like to share?
I think the day starting a practice is actually shouldering a lot of responsibility on yourself. Suddenly, when you have to start on your own, you become professionally responsible. You have to be responsible not for yourself, but for society at large, and especially the people who are with you as a part of your endeavor. You become responsible. So from an I, in one day you become a we, right? Everything, you're no longer a soul, right, who has to just fend for yourself or herself. And I think it's also because generally this rosy picture of having a practice, the first few years you suddenly realize that it's not the design that you're working with. You're actually becoming probably one of the management person, right, where the main objective is first to get the project, to get its finances right, to give the salary. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't start, but it is a lot of other work that starts coming and you say like, this is not what I wanted to do, right? And what I'm doing, like I was better off earlier doing the design and now I'm just doing the management.
Yeah, so what you're saying is a very important thing and which is being resonated by Anuj and others, that what we teach you here is how to design.
Yes.
And there is a whole part of, so because what happens is that given the limited amount of time, it takes a long time to learn how to design.
Yes.
And then you have to figure out how to be able to put it a little crudely, sell the design. You know? So that's the challenge and that's the reason why we're having this. So what about you, Rajiv? You'd like to?
Well, I agree with what Anuj said. I think at least I started when I felt I had something to say, when I wanted a voice, when I felt I could perhaps do something a little differently, a little bit better than the partner I was reporting to at the time. That sort of was in my mind. I certainly did. I mean, I hit the ground running through luck, so luck has something to play with this. In terms of running the office, I think that there's something to be said for the love of design itself. There's a lot of work in everything else, which I agree with. It's getting clients and setting fees. Setting the fees is easy, getting the fees is hard.
Yeah.
So true.
Running the project, talking to mysteries, going to site, all of that stuff. And then going back at the end of the day and design. That's the part I love. You do all of that, and I remember my first few years of when we started going back, and I would start at 11 and 12 at night. Everything was done. Now I start actually designing.
The fun part of it.
The actual fun part.
What about you, Asha? What do you have to say about it?
I had a slightly different trajectory than the rest of them, because at some point in my career I was also faced with this question saying, do I want to start my own practice? And you get to that point after a few years of saying, oh, but isn't that the next obvious step? At which point I spent a fair bit of time reflecting on why would I want to start my own practice? And what is it that is not being fulfilled for me that having my own practice would fulfill for me?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the things that everyone said is a part of it, that you'd want it if you have something to say, and you'd want it if where you are at present you're not being able to say it, and you don't have autonomy, and you feel like you can do a little bit better without the guidance of the person who's with you. But I was fortunate enough to find myself in a space where I had everything that I wanted, where I had autonomy, I had opportunities to grow, I had space to express my own point of view, work with a team of people who I liked. Like, it's an interesting thing, but you spend more time with the people that you work with than you do at home. Just by sheer hours, you're spending more time in your office and you're spending more time with the people at work than your own family.
Yeah.
So it's an incredibly uncomfortable thing if you don't like the people that you're working with. And I got very lucky that I was working with people whose company I genuinely enjoyed. So when it's sort of ticking on, there's acknowledgement and there's credit and there's everything that I would seek in an independent practice. Then I was like, okay, then I don't feel the need to go and build a separate practice just to be able to get to the same space where I'm currently, but 10 years in the future. You know, if I'm going to build a practice in the shadow of what I'm currently doing, and as an image of what I'm currently doing, then I was like, that doesn't make sense to me.
So what you're saying really is that you have two sorts of practice. One is an independent practice, where you are carrying the burden of everything, and the other is a partnership.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's a partnership that you form on your own, or you are drawn into.
Yeah.
So, you know, what Asha is saying is that she's been drawn into this partnership, and she found that it worked for her. So there are various things like that. Now the next question is, how does one find a client initially in one's career? You know, and how should one retain them? You see, the challenge is not just, as you were saying, it's not difficult to probably find a client, but to get the fees out of them is one big issue. And in time is not just the fees in a manner where he's paying you according to the work you've done. But so how do you retain, and how do you get your first project?
I can take
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. Well, your first client could come from anywhere, right? It depends, like it mainly would be word of mouth. In today's world, it might be social media, but generally, like we have realized, we came on social media like 3-4 years back. It does give you that people know you. How much work comes from there is still unknown to everybody. But yes, it is mainly referral. It is the people that you interact with, the vendors you interact with. So anybody could be your client, right? And how do you retain them is getting the client for the first time is, okay, once you've got them, the main thing is how to retain them and how do you keep getting work from them year on year, right? That's the main thing. We have been working with clients for 10 years, 12 years now, and it is very difficult. Everybody says it's very simple, but actually it's one of the most difficult job on hand. You have to be at it all the time. We have to know that you're as good as your last project, right? For one project gone haywire, you lose the client, right? You have to self-innovate, you have to self-challenge, because clients are also wanting something new all the time. Very simple example I'll take is like, PVR Cinemas, we've done around 150 screens for them, and none of our projects look similar. So it's the biggest challenge for ourselves that with the same client, same brief, same requirements, how do you create every time a design that would appeal to them? So yes, it is challenging, but it is doable.
It is doable. That's the clue, that it is doable. What about anybody else? I'm not going to ask
I have
names.
a story for you.
Yeah,
It's
please.
a very odd story. When I thought about starting my practice, I was actually living in the United States in New York. I was working in New York at the time. And I worked for, at that time, a very large corporate. And I was asking questions of myself. Do I want to be in a large corporate? This is the kind of work we do. They had such segmented verticals, such clear verticals. I was very uncomfortable with that sort of system. And I had come back to India for a vacation to think about what I wanted to do. I had, because this was the US, I had exactly 2 weeks. So I was back on that day. In those 2 weeks, I met a few people casually, just social get-togethers. And I told one of them, I'm thinking of coming back to India. I don't know what to do. What do you think about this? And sort of forged my partnership. I had 2 other partners. We structured it, we worked out what we wanted to do. And I was the first one to take a flight and actually land in India, not knowing
What you
what
going
I
to
was
do?
doing really precisely. But I had enough money for the flight, which was good enough for me. These flights tend to land at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I landed at 3 in the morning, ended up at home at 4 in the morning. My parents told me they still love me, which was good. Went to sleep at about 5:36 in the morning and was woken up at 7 by my father. I was very unhappy because I wanted to sleep. At least my first day at home, I wanted khata khana and all the love and attention. He said, you remember that gentleman you had met? He just texted me. Do you want to meet him? At 7:30 in the morning, I hadn't slept for 24 hours or something like that. I don't know. He said, nobody wants to talk to you about a project. So at 8:30 in the morning, I was at his house and I had the most bewildering conversation because we walked around his sort of farmhouse. We walked around this farmhouse talking about the project he wanted to do. And I said, he asked me, he said, I think you sound sincere. So I'm willing to give you this work and I hope you can do this. To Ayaka. Don't get it. I just landed. So he was like, can you do this? I can do this.
So it's what Rachna was also saying, that it's who connects with you, remembers you, and suddenly calls you back, right?
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
But always on the day you land it down.
Yeah, that's a rare occasion.
Yeah. So I have a story
Yeah.
to add to this. Very interestingly, we were already practicing for some time. So this is to illustrate that you can get projects, either through referral, through word of mouth, through relatives. Initially, when you start, someone in your friend circle will give you a project. But once you're deeper into the practice, so very interestingly, Snehanshu referred a project to me.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just came back to me that this was very interesting. I suddenly remembered when he started telling the story. So this was one of his friends or batchmates were working in Hindware. If you remember that
yes,
guy
yes,
Gautam.
Gautam.
So he referred Hindware and I was designing Hindware's corporate office in a commercial building. and we were doing it, so I would go to the site, we were young and very excited, so I would hang around the site, get the work done. And that building's owner, one builder, would watch me. I didn't know this, but he kept watching me for 3 months while I was building that corporate office. And so the Hindware story took a different tangent. That's a story for another day. But 6 months later, this builder calls me out of the blue and says, Mr. Mehta, will you come and meet me? Okay. So he opens the plan and he says, this is a 200-acre township I am bringing in Amritsar. And I had not done any housing by that time. So would you design this for me? I said, I have no experience. I would love to, but let me tell you, I have no experience of designing a housing. He's saying, I have seen you work. And I like your attitude, the way you work, I like your eye for detail, and I like your dedication and your sincerity. And just on basis of that, I get this massive 200-acre township to do. After that, I would walk into any builder's office and say, क्या बना रहे हो? 10 acre का housing? हाँ कर देंगे. Think about it. So the breakthrough came, the connect came unknowingly, through my friends.
I didn't even know this had happened.
Yeah, even I didn't realize this. I never thanked you. You started my career in housing. So, it could happen anywhere. The story is that if you work diligently, if the quality of work, your work should speak.
Yeah.
And your attitude should speak.
So I think,
be it an existing client, be it someone new you're meeting, it's your sincerity and your attitude.
so I'll just add my 2 bit here to say that I think it's the level of professionalism which keeps getting you work. If you're going to be a fly-by-night sort of designer and you don't know what you're doing, you haven't done your research, you don't even know, say, let's say, building codes properly, then the client is not going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Akshat, what would you say?
Hard work and intensity.
Be at it.
No, I can't think. I don't think, I can't think that far back.
That's fair. It's too far back. Okay, so since Akshat is not saying anything, Asha, would you like to say?
I mean, I think I don't think you can fake your way into getting your first client. I think there's something to be said for just being authentic. I think when you start off, putting yourself out there in that way can be uncomfortable. Like a lot of people who are designers tend to prefer to just be like, let me do my work, and I don't really want to be the person having to advertise my work. But unfortunately, a part of building your own practice is also building a muscle in that. And there are lots of these things that make you uncomfortable that you have to start sort of engaging with. But you have to find your own way and your own rhythm of doing it. That if you're a natural introvert or a natural extrovert, you have to find your own way of being able to go and strike a conversation with someone who you haven't met before and who you're being introduced to. And yeah, I've known people who have randomly met their first client at the table next door at a cafe that they were having lunch in. I've known people who've met the passenger seated next to them in business class, saying that that's my next client. I mean, a client can literally come from anywhere, but the experience of it will be best for both of you going forward if you're just being yourself. So yeah.
So what we are saying is that at the moment, the way architects or interior architects are operating is that they look or they leave a lot to chance meetings. But finally, it's the work that you do which keeps getting you more work. That's the final test. Now I'll give you a third option, which is my own story, which is that we were 3 years out of college and we took part in a national level competition just for the heck of it. We were all employed in some other place and we used to work over weekends and stuff like that. And we sort of manipulated the student council room in SPA, took that over and started our production, including the model. And we did it as a lark. And then those days, A+D had just started as a magazine, and Razia Grover was the editor. She calls up so there are 3 of us who were doing this, and calls up one of my later partners, Anurag, and says, "You guys have won the competition." So Anurag calls me up and says, we won the competition. And there was total disbelief in his voice. I said, you know, it's too early in the day for you to play pranks on me, just forget about it. Where has it been announced? No, Razia told me. I said, well, how does she know? I don't believe any of this. But it was true. And of course, it's a very long story of how long we took to build it, close to 20 years. It can become a pot boiler, but we don't get into that now. So what I'm saying is that the other way is to enter competitions. Very recently, there was a conference at IIC organized by Rahul Mehrotra on South Asian architecture, and there's this architect from Hyderabad who tried his best to break into the practice, just couldn't succeed, you know, whatever reason. So he said, what am I going to do? I'm going to do competitions, and I'm going to do international competitions. He started doing international competition, and he's building a huge urban design project in Korea today. Yeah. And he won them. I mean, he started winning them wholesale, you know, almost. Of course, not all got built. But the Korean one, now the moment he's built the Korean ones, then he's become known internationally. He's no longer operating just in India. So you see, how you get your client, how you form your practice, there's so many different ways, and I think that's the thing about being a designer. You create your own way. You know, you don't have to, I mean, you have to work somewhere to get the experience, but you don't have to end up only working in a firm. You see? So anyway, let me come to the next question. So, does a design philosophy for each one of you develop organically through working on actual projects, or should one have a sense of your design direction even before taking on clients? Now, this is a trick question. You get what I'm saying, right? You have a design philosophy, you want to now find clients and put it onto that client, or is it something that you discover by simply working on and on? Maybe with somebody else. What would you say? Who would like to go first? Akshat didn't say last time, so your chance this time.
I think I had been fairly focused on learning certain things that started with British high tech and then sort of translating them into an Indian context with the resources that are available here. And that stuck with me through practice, and I started practice, and then when I started practice on my own and started setting up a firm. I also sort of had this belief in an equal opportunities practice, which meant that, you know, while everyone has a say, we had to have enough convincing power on our clients. And that came from the back of what you studied, what you had researched, and how you could communicate it. So for us, it was important to have a philosophy, loosely formulate it, stick to it, and accept projects. We've never pitched, we've never actually gone out and asked for work. People have come to us to give us work, and then we filtered that work to say, do we really want to work with A, this person, B, this organization, and C, do this particular program. So that way we're kind of old-fashioned and traditional.
So would you say that you, without maybe consciously trying, have built a brand? Maybe brand is too big a word, but what I'm saying is that, you know, you knew what you wanted to do, and you managed to carry on doing it, and you could convince your clients that yes, this is what works best.
Yes and no. I mean, we would have to be, you do have long conversations on every project on what is right for it, because you do need to evolve it programmatically and technically in every way, and you have to work towards the success of a project and not just your own success. I'm not sure if we built a brand for it, but I'm pretty certain that we always communicated a bias in our point of view for it. And it helped that we were not going out to people to say, give us work. So then we'd have to convince people.
So what you're saying really, if I can understand correctly, is that you built an identity.
Yes.
Rather than a brand, you built an identity as a designer, as an architect, which people liked and would come to you. Roughly.
Yes, roughly.
I mean, you don't have the time.
Liked or
otherwise,
disliked. Liked or
we could have a longer discussion on this. What would you say, Rasma?
Well, I feel that we, as a practice, we do not have a design philosophy, but we have a value system, right? We have these values it is our design philosophy that we do not want to stick to one way of designing. It's very commercially successful to just keep repeating the same vocabulary, but this is our conscious decision that we will not stick to one styling, right? But yes, our value systems are constant. We would get those values in every project, every client we meet. And I feel like, in terms of what you asked about the clients, ultimately you hang around or you gel with people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
And that's what lasts.
Yeah.
Everything else is a fallout ultimately.
Yeah.
So it becomes like just like an ecosystem of sorts,
Yes.
right? You are like, attracting people who are liking your work and they are like-minded.
Absolutely. Who would like to say next? You or him? Anuj, yeah.
Taking off from what she's saying about the value system, I think your practice is based on the design process you've learned. Maybe the variety of projects you come across, the clients are different, but if your basic fundamental design process is correct, if your ethics are correct, and you are designing to fulfill a client's aspiration, but you're also designing in response to context, in response to the user, then you're on the right track. You're not giving in so easily. So you have to hold on to your values at some point. So I have two examples on that. Slightly negative examples, but just to show that sometimes we have to stick to our values and our design process when you are practicing. So we were designing this very large housing, and one of the licensed architects came up with a lacuna where he said that if the floor plate is less than 500 square meters, you can build a multi-story tower with one staircase, no fire escape. So ethically I felt if I'm doing a housing and it's a multi-story tower, I have to have a fire escape staircase. So we had a dispute with the builder and we left the project. And he went ahead and built that housing, and unfortunately that tower caught fire and two people died in fire. So it's unfortunate, he had to add fire escapes later, but you have to stick to your ethics. And very interestingly, recently I've been working in Ladakh, helping a Rinpoche do his meditation center, where I'm doing it as a charitable project. So I went to Ladakh, studied the context, studied the climate, studied the local building techniques. So we are building in mud for him. It's an extreme climate, a lot of temperature. So building in mud with wood and mud roofs and everything, which is climate responsive architecture. And I met a student of ours, whom me and Snehanshu both had taught recently at an award function. And he said, sir, even I am building in Ladakh. And I said, wonderful. He said, I'm building a hotel in Ladakh. And 2 days later, I see he's doing a colonial monstrosity in Leh. In the middle of Leh, he's making Leela Kempinski hotel. So I met him a few days later. I said, why are you doing something like this in Ladakh? He said, because the client wants it. I said, well, you always have an option of educating the client or saying no. He said, saying no to client is not an option, sir. So you have to have some values, you have to respect your profession. You have to have passion for this profession and learn that as architects, as designers, we impact society. We impact lives. If I design a housing which has more than 2,000 families, that's 10,000 people. A badly designed kitchen or a badly ventilated house will impact so many families. We have to realize how important a role we play.
Asha, you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think a lot of it has been covered, but we as a practice were now 22 years old, and it took us also a long time to arrive at a synthesis of what we might even claim to be a design philosophy. And we still don't call it that. We have organizational values which guide the way in which we practice and conduct ourselves, and which in a way are a reflection of the ethics that I was talking about. And then we now have design values where we recognize things that are important to us, which cover things around innovation and sustainability and sort of adapting to context, and those kinds of things, really fundamental things which we were practicing but we just hadn't articulated. And the articulation has also been a response to the fact that we scaled. So we went from being 25 people to 120 people over a course of many years. So to ensure that everyone is understanding why we're doing what we're doing, why we're making the choices we're making. It's not some unilateral fiefdom coming from the top, but there is a rationale behind it. We sort of synthesized it into these design values to have this conversation. But it is pretty much in line with the fact that you want to be seen as the person who stands for something. And you have to live with the choices that you make. So, for example, one of the early things that we as a practice were always keen to do was to try and innovate. And innovate with materials and techniques and reinvent the wheel a little bit. Now, the challenge with doing that is sometimes you fail. Like you can prototype with the client and you can try something new, but you can't always guarantee that the outcome is going to be successful, which is a hard conversation to have with the client, to be like, we'll try it, but we might not succeed, we'll fail, and when we fail, we have to redo it and it'll cost you more money. They're essentially like funding your experimentation. But to sort of have that conversation and onboard them is one challenge, but our commitment was always, we're not going to let it go until you have a product that you're happy with, whatever that process looks like. So there is sort of give and take and a balance in this, where it's going to be painful for the client, sometimes going to be painful for you, but you've chosen that you're going to stand for something, so you're choosing to not take the easy way out. When sometimes maybe the easy way out on retrospect might have been the better thing to do, but those are all...
Like the Leela Hotel in
Yeah.
So what would you say? It's on.
I think everybody used the word values, which is correct. With our firm, because we started at a specific age, we actually started in a very structured way. We actually sat down and we had many, many discussions about what are the values. Exactly that was one of the values, what do you think will matter to us the most? And that ranged from how we design, how we want to design, what are the issues in design which are important to us. And all of those things are design related, and there were value systems which were how we want to run the office, what kind of people we want to work with, what kind of mindset do we want to have in our office, do we want to teach? I mean, a big part of my life has also been teaching. So that's, all of those were value systems which were intrinsic to us. We actually wrote these down, so we have these tedious documents which we wrote down, which is still there somewhere hidden in our servers. I think it's important to have that because there are so many factors in a practice which are extraneous.
Yes.
Which have little to do with the firm, with you, with us. That you have to hold your values dear. And in many cases, like other examples given, we have definitely had to, in some cases, slow down projects, in some cases, redo design, in some cases, work double or triple what we would have done if we had taken the easy path. One of our values was that we wanted to innovate every time. Every project, we must find something new. Even if it's the smallest, tiniest detail, we'll find it. And that means we have to work harder at it, and that's a value system, right? Clients may not love it, they may not appreciate it. Sometimes they don't see it. It's not theirs to see, but it's there.
Right.
And if we hold those values dear, I think we have managed to, in general, successfully communicate it to clients, successfully execute in projects in general. I mean, and the last word, which I think hasn't been mentioned, is this dirty word called compromise. College and education of all kinds is typically uncompromising. So I think some evolution happens during projects to some extent. One has to, I don't think change values, but certainly temper them, certainly understand that we are not designing for ourselves, we're designing for others, that those values have to translate into social meaning, client benefit, lots of other things.
So what you're saying is that designers need to listen to their clients carefully and understand what they are trying to communicate, and not simply come from their own standpoint to say that, look, this is how it is.
I
No,
holding their ground.
I'm not saying you have to listen to the client to do exactly what they want you to do, but to listen to understand what the aspirations are and to figure out how. So this is again my thing. I've always, and I've told a lot of my students this, that when you're doing a design, the client already has certain ideas about what that design should be, right? And these days with internet, Instagram, you just name it. So another thing is to understand where that person is coming from and then eventually design something that is beyond the expectation of that client. Then only are you a really good designer. You have to think beyond, and that's what you're trained to do. You're not simply taking instructions or orders or dreams and then translating them exactly the way they are. So, yeah.
Design quality.
Sorry?
What makes a common person assess design quality? What is design quality index for a client?
See, today the client can look at any picture anywhere on the globe and say, this is what I want. But my take on this is that that's their reference. It doesn't mean that they really want that. If you can do something that they appreciate, I mean, they will eventually appreciate it more than that one picture that they showed you.
I think what everyone's saying here is that you're not, as a designer, just providing a service.
Right.
You may be paying service tax, but
Yes.
you're not providing just a service.
Yes.
So you're not here to do just what somebody else wants. My question to you was, in this entire, or to everyone, is what you're communicating this. Often we communicate design appreciation amongst people who talk the same language. How do you communicate that and understand whether you're actually meeting that criteria before it gets published everywhere satisfactorily for a client? And therefore, what is design quality assessment for a person who is not from our field?
Sure. So that's where your skill as a communicator comes in and how you choose to explain it. For instance, in the past, when you didn't have SketchUp and all the rest of the softwares, what did you do? You actually sketched. And you had long, I remember having discussions which ran into 10 o'clock in the night, starting somewhere at 4 in the afternoon, where it's a debate. It's not even a debate, it's a discussion, where you're listening to what this person is trying to tell you, and he is also willing to listen to what you're trying to explain. It's through a discussion that you yourself finally arrive at what that person really requires, or for that person to even realize that this is what I really wanted, right? Now, what I would say is that that's something that cannot really be taught that well. It has to be learned on the job, by making mistakes, by losing clients maybe. But the point here is that today, that communication has reduced hugely because of the images that are floating around. Yeah. Because there are ready-made references that people don't want to move away from because मुझे तो ऐसा ही office चाहिए. Now that's where it becomes a little more difficult, but for the designer, it then is a challenge that you can overcome very easily by, if you're worth your salt. You see, finally, there are designers and designers. There are those who are brilliant, and that brilliance will show through. And then there are those who are really competent. They don't have to be really brilliant. And there are clients who are expecting different levels of creativity, which then you address, right? Now, I was going to rope in somebody like, you'll have to take the microphone. Microphone kiske paas hai? Right behind you. Right behind you. Madhu.
Actually, I do understand what you're saying, and it's a very decent question. I'm going to not answer, but try and respond to it, because I don't think there's an answer, even I don't have an answer to that. The response would be that a major change that has happened in the architecture profession, and I can say that what used to happen at 40 years ago when I was a student, architecture profession was such that you became a design thinker, you designed a product, and then it is out there, and there was a client, of course waiting for a client, and of course take it or leave it. Now things have changed. It's literally, the whole thing is that the people who are around coming to you, they're not really going and looking at a product that's out for sale or for whatever, for taking, and everything. So, in simpler words, it's become very collaborative. So when I talk about my experience as a professional, the best thing that has happened is that it becomes very, very collaborative with the client without losing what you said, which is important to your, there is your own philosophy of innovation, experimentation, experiential, and all that stuff. And that's why you either the client keeps staying with you or they go. So that's essentially it. I don't think at the days of you design something, take it or leave it alone. It is, as what Snehanshu was saying, is that the client also has aspirations. May not know that, okay, I'm finally in the end it will be architectural discipline, kind of beautiful building, or IIAD kind of beautiful building, or it may not be. The client may not know that. But the process and the collaborative process in which it happens, and it ticks all the boxes. And the rest of it is, you're right, it's a particular magazine that's going to take it up and publish over. Yeah.
Yes, you can give a client's perspective, please.
Because it's an interesting question. Akshat has asked that. So I'm a client, but I've been a client. What I feel is that, yes, perhaps a client has an idea of what they're looking for. Maybe in some cases a full Instagram image. But I think what a client appreciates is when you made the effort to go beyond it. And I think it shows. To most clients, at least me, would have shown. And what a client is disappointed with is, if you just stick to that, and I mean, we can't see all the angles. But if the architect can show why they've done this and give a rational explanation, and sometimes you go away and say, wow, I never thought of it, what an amazing idea, right? And it's back to that thing, that hard work and ethics and whatever. And again, another thing as a client is that when an architect shows us a design, and we're like, yeah, it's okay, and you can move on. In many cases, nobody goes back and makes it better, right? But the architects which would. So as a client, I'd be delighted by it, right? Saying that, my question to most architects is, forget me, are you happy with the design first? Right? Do you think this is your best iteration? Or just because you have so many projects and so many things to do, you just have to get over my work? Right?
Yeah,
I think, Akshat, if I understand, what I understand about what he's trying to say is he used the word of design quality assessment, right? Like what it is about. And I don't know, but I can tell you, ultimately you have to assess at some level your own design, right? What you feel about your design. And I can just take an instance, we currently finished the project and client asked me exactly the way, what do you think about the design? I said well, you should tell what you think about the design. He says, no, but I want to know what you think about it. And I said our endeavor was to translate you as a space, right? If you could. And he said, that's why I love that design, because you have translated my personality into a space. To us, that is design, right? Design is not about surfaces, right? Be it architecture or it be interior architecture. It is about the aura, the feel of the space ultimately that you create there.
So can I ask the next question? Otherwise, I can see everybody. Yeah, we're going to be. Sorry, yes,
no,
please.
If we're not allowed, then we're
No, of course not. Nothing of the sort. Go ahead.
No, so I had a partial response to Akshat. So I think Akshat's question is a little naughty, because you're trying to quantify something which is a quality.
Yeah.
Quantifying a qualitative issue is a problem in multiple fields, not just architecture. So I'm not sure one should attempt to do that completely. Yes, there are ways to assess quality of space and quality of architecture. Quantifying it, I don't know, but I do have an anecdotal answer for you. So when I was a graduate student, which means I was doing my master's about 25 something years back, I had the opportunity of being part of a studio called the Learning from Las Vegas Studio 30 years hence. I was at the university, they run this Vegas studio. So I was in Las Vegas, which was an insane city to study. And we had the opportunity of meeting one of the largest hoteliers in Las Vegas called Steve Wynn. Enormous hotels, Bellagio and several others. And he's sort of in popular culture satirized as a particularly evil man. If you've seen the Ocean's 11 film, the Andy Garcia character is based on him.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be a nasty piece of work, nasty businessman. He was very pleasant with us because we were architecture students, and he said, I love architects, I want to talk to architecture students, and we discovered he had one of the most spectacular private collections of postmodern art in the world. He leases his art out to the Guggenheim, to the Met, and to several other institutions. Tremendous collection. And he said, I actually want my architects to design, and I'm looking for quality of space.
Yes.
I'm looking for it. So we asked a similar question. How do you determine quality of space? So I remember, he responded to us and said, his words, not mine. He said, I have something called wow factor. In other words, you should be able to enter a space which I'm building, gasp, and say the word wow. So it just should be, I want this. And he said, I'm willing to pay you money for every second I can make you not move your feet. Right? So he said, how much? We were asked, how much money? He said, $10 million a second. So if you can actually make somebody love and appreciate the space for a second, so the quantifiable answer to that is $10 million.
So we have here amongst the other invitees people who are very senior to all of us. So this is the point I want to ask questions from. Ask a question of maybe Vinod first, then Katie, and then I'm not going to let Sanjeev go. Sanjeev, you'll also have to answer this question. One of the students can please manage the mic, no? Because now we are going to go with the. So the question is linked to the previous question. Now, for those who don't know, Professor Vinod Gupta is the pioneer of passive and active solar architecture. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I remember you as. So he's the first, I think the first architect who started this whole thing at the time when it wasn't well known, I would say. Fashion to ab ban gaya hai, but then it was not fashionable. So, so in a way, the way he practiced, and he's done a huge number of very well-known buildings where he's looking at this. So my question really is that, you developed a field almost single-handedly, good 30 years ago, maybe more, where there was nobody else working in that area. So apart from the challenges of developing that field, did that help you in your practice, in the sense that you were the only person that people would go to if they ever wanted to get to that at all? Am I right in saying this, would you say?
Yes, I do think that helped me, because some of the projects came because there was nobody else to do that. That helps. But I don't think it's true for just that. It's true for
anything.
Any line that you develop, you get people who are interested in that kind of work, and that happens, yes.
Absolutely. So that's why I wanted to use this example. So one more question regarding this is that the same thing that I've been asking them as well, that how do you make sure that you're still at the top in your own work? That you are still the reference, let's say. How does that happen?
I think all of us do this, that at the beginning of a project, we decide what we wish to achieve in that project. And as long as, for me personally, it is always something that we haven't done before. It's a new project, new theme, and therefore we must achieve something else in it, and that's how I would stay. I've done something useful.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've stayed at the top, but it's something useful that I have done.
So what you're saying is that every time it's like a new learning, which makes you remain more or less at the cutting edge level. Sort of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say that?
I agree with that.
Thank you. So this is again for the students, you know, you have to develop your forte, you have to develop what are you really good at and then remain good. That's what, I think that's what everybody is saying here. But I wanted to talk to Vinod because of the example, I mean, you can see. So let me now come to a very mundane question. All this sort of stuff, and I'll say.
To get money from clients.
No, that we have done with. So the question is.
That could be taught.
It could be taught, but anyway. No, it's like, I think it's Rahul who said this to me the other day at Lodi Gardens when I bumped into him. He said that, look, if architects want to make money, there are 100 ways of making it efficiently.
Oh, yeah.
But if you want to be an architect, you have to first figure out why you want to be an architect. Is it just for the money? Because there are better ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Easier ways of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So, isn't that so? Am I quoting you correctly? So, would you like to expand on this a little bit, Rahul? When you say, this is what happens when you meet me unscheduled at Lodi Gardens.
There's nothing to expand.
It's all the same.
There's nothing to expand on that. I mean, you went to design school to learn design. You go to business school to learn business. So if the questions you're facing are HR and finance and marketing related, then you don't go to design school for that. You do your grad program or something in, I don't know, in that field.
In that field.
But I will say this from my own personal experience. Yeah, I went to design school for 5 years. I taught with a bunch of people out here for over 20 years, etc. And I still find that there's still so much more to learn in design as a way of articulating a voice. It's much like a writer in that. And you have to sort of figure out the type of practice that you want to run. You want to run a large commercial practice where, you know, then your questions and your challenges are different, and you have to pick up tools that address those challenges. And if you want to run a studio, then that's a different type of, that. But if you want to make money, there are lots of other ways of making money that are, ask Donald Trump.
Become president is one. So the next question is regarding this in a way, which is that how should one manage design projects to ensure timely delivery while still encouraging exploration and experimentation? How do you find the balance? That's one. And the next question also is related to this, that how does one ensure that there are no mistakes in design delivery? What is the management process behind it? Okay, this is a tough one because we all love to think that no, there is no process. There is one. And the last one, because I might as well say all the questions straight away because they are sort of related. That's how the students gave it to me. So throughout a design project, I've just sort of made it sound better. Throughout a design project, the creative process is crucial, but other tasks like client communications, partnering with consultants, construction drawings, which are correct, technical documentation also play a vital role. So how typically should an architect allocate time across these different aspects of a project? They're sort of related. I mean, you don't have to answer them question by question. You get the gist.
Just look at Snehanshu and answer them. Yes.
Look towards the camera, yes. You're on candid camera.
I've forgotten the first question.
Yeah.
Okay. So one is that you have design exploration and experimentation,
Right.
but you have to deliver in time. How do you do that? Which brings us to this whole thing of that what is the management process that you follow by which you allow creative freedom, because that's what is finally going to convince the client. And at the same time, the client is also looking for a no-nonsense, simple, ready to construct set of documents or coming in time and all of that. I know a lot of architects struggle with that. So how do you do it in your own ways? And I guess that's it. That's the thing.
Okay.
Once you're organized, you're absolutely free.
Yeah, I think it boils down to experience actually and professionalism. And with experience, you just become a quicker designer. You learn to work with deadlines and not procrastinating. As students, we procrastinate a lot. But as a professional, you learn to work much faster. And once you start getting the value of your word, because when you've committed to a client that, you know, I'll be delivering the design this date, you have to be your word, you know, be professional about it and present the design that day. It is up to you on how hard you work, how hard you get others to work along with you on that project.
So I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute. In the context of IIAD, replace the word client with teachers.
Yeah.
Okay, carry
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, don't take your teachers for granted, don't take your clients for granted. Yeah, I always tell my students that, you know, as students, you tend to bring your submissions late, never treat deadlines seriously. So I just give an example. Supposing you had a meeting with KP Singh, the chairman of DLF, would you walk in at 10 o'clock at the meeting and tell him, sir, the printer wasn't working, or the laptop crashed or something else? You will have no excuse. You will bloody well make sure that those designs and drawings are ready at 9 o'clock the previous day, you know, not even that day. So it's just professionalism and experience and just your commitment. You know, if you're organized and you learn to organize, you know the strengths of your team, who's good at what, and you learn to organize the work and allocate the work accordingly. There's no rocket science to it. It's actually, it's once you figure it out, it's pretty simple and it can't be taught.
You have to keep doing it to learn
you have to keep doing it. Yeah, once you figure out the system.
Any good design is a leap of faith. And you know, there is this one, but you realize that there's only a small part of it that's a leap of faith once you've put in the hours and the number of years that you have in delivering things, be it via drawings or actually physically building. And you learn very quickly how to get organized, be it on your own drawing board, or on a computer, or in your communications, or, well, interdisciplinary communication, which is consultant communication. You learn to speak their language. There is a dictionary of architecture, and you do need to read that sometimes. And once you've sorted that out, it takes a couple of years, and then you're absolutely free. You can really focus your energies on pure exploration, because you know you can achieve the result. Your studio has your back, and you know it because you've spent those years sorting it out.
What do the others have to say?
I would say that, you know, in any project there is a known and there is an unknown, right? The known is the delivery after design. Design is unknown. So what we generally do is that we do not, like, you know, even if the client is squeezing us for time, right? We say, okay, delivery, we know, like we can deliver in that time, but design is something we will not be squeezed on, and that's almost like a precondition that we put in front of the client, that we do need this much time, and please, if we are, suppose we are not satisfied with the design, we would need more time, right? So that way, like, you're not pressurized on the design time, and that's what you get for yourself.
Right. How about you?
Well, I mean, I think your question had several parts, so I'm trying to think of a multi-part answer. The first part, I agree with Akshat. Systems to run a practice. The question here is a question of practice. A practice has systems in terms of documentation, drawing, production. Production is a huge part of it. How efficiently you produce and deliver and talk to clients. So we did, and I certainly would recommend it to anybody, to get your fundamental office systems in place. And it certainly has reduced, like Akshat, I agree, reduced stress, reduced, not completely, he seems calmer than I am, reduced the complexity of a project significantly. In terms of how does one design with all of the other pressures, I think that was sort of the intent of the question.
Yeah.
The first part is again referring to Akshat, work harder. It's very hard because project deadlines are what they are. We do tell clients we need design time. We do ask for it. We do specify this is the amount of time we need. But we often need to work a fair bit harder than certain other kinds of firms and practices to do so, And part of it is also, at least my firm's internal process. I talked about a value system. It was part of our value system to have something we call a charretting system, which means every design project, we first work out issues and values and we open it up like a studio to the whole office. So everybody from the intern to the partners will sketch, draw, ideate, model, do what you like. And we bring it all to the table, every project, small or big, interiors or urban designs, and we do the whole range there. We will ideate, we will keep it open. If you don't want to be part of the ideation, you're free not to, but it's lovely to be part of it. And then we sort of curate and work out ideas which are appropriate to us. This is harder. It's not just one person's idea, not a partner's idea, which is driven through like a nail through wood. In order to do this, we need to pace ourselves and we need to work harder in the duration that we have to do it. So that's my answer.
Asha, what would you say?
I think exploration is actually incredibly important, and that balance between real world delivery timelines versus the creative freedom you want to give, it's hard, and it's one of the, I think the first 6 to 8 months or up to a year of someone entering a practice, their first job in this profession, I think is just grappling with that, where you're just dealing with the fact that you suddenly have to meet a deadline. And I've had every imaginable kind of conversation with the designer at that level, where like there's a constant negotiation saying that, oh, but why do I need to stick to this timeline? So somewhere I think when you're starting out and you might be just working on a small aspect of something, you lose sight of the fact that you're doing this in service of a client who may not be doing it for his own self-fulfillment, who might be doing it in service of his business. And the success of the project depends on the fact that ultimately the outcome is successful for his business. So it is a balance where then it comes down to people with more experience to be able to manage the timeline while creating little opportunities for sprints, for explorations to happen. So you explore, but you explore within, you set yourself a deadline saying, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 days, 2 days to try out every possible version of how I can respond to this brief, and then sort of narrow it down with the people whose feedback I value. When it comes to mistakes, which I think was your...
How do you avoid mistakes?
I don't think you can.
Okay.
Like,
fair enough.
I mean, the thing is,
okay, how do you
minimize? You guys are clients, you know this.
I know, but what about minimizing mistakes?
So, one is that let's accept the fact that we are all human beings who are working on the projects, and there are going to be mistakes. Checks and balances are things that we also put into place where, okay, we will, more experienced eyes will check the work of less experienced eyes purely to be able to minimize and sort of do some degree of quality control. But despite that, things slip through. Something will end up going to site, and if you're lucky, you'll have a really diligent site supervisor who will catch it before, God forbid, it is built. But yes, we've all been in the situation where you kind of just need to own up and be like, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Take responsibility. Because you're working for other people who'll understand. They'll see the fact that you're there trying to do what you can to fix it. But yes, I mean,
so you're saying that one needs to be very honest about the way
100%
you come across to the client.
And I also think that like somewhere it takes the pressure off of the team, saying that there is, look, we all have each other's backs. Okay, we're all working in a structure where I will do my best to make sure that I will catch your mistake, you do your best to make sure you catch my mistake. But there is every now and then a ball slips. And when it slips, I don't want you to be left with the experience as someone on my team that the world has come to an end. Like, we're not in the business of saving lives. No one has died. Own up. Don't try and skirt around the issue. And let's figure out the best way and the most cost-effective way to try and fix this. So there has to be some room, like you're talking about being creative and doing something that's experimental and iterative and innovation. There has to be some room for failure. And it has to be designed into the system.
Absolutely. So here, I've run out of my questions, but I have my own questions. Not my questions, their questions, and now my own. So I'm going to request Sanjeev, if you are comfortable, to answer one question. Okay, so somebody please give him the mic. So while he gets the mic, let me put Sanjeev into a context. Sanjeev, as you all know, or rather I have said that he is one of the founding partners of Karu. Some of us here already know about Karu. For those who don't, the students especially, Karu is a very, I would say, a kind of a design firm which approaches design and tries to do work in a field where not many people venture, which is to work with traditional crafts.
Yeah.
Now, therefore, the question is, and they've been very successful at it. They've done things like the entire fabrication with the craftspeople at the Anandpur Sahib Museum. They've done, for those who've been to the Oberoi's, the entrance at the reception has a installation but done by them, and there are many more such things. So the question really to you, Sanjeev, is that you've chosen to go off the conventional path, and you long time ago decided to follow a direction which not many people are willing to take. Therefore, how difficult is it to convince clients to even, because you see the advantage that I have, for instance, over maybe you, is that I'm working in a more conventional manner where clients already sort of know what I may be able to do. But you are now trying to do, or you have been trying to do something that the client doesn't have much idea about at all, and maybe is more wary or suspicious. Is that the case, or am I misreading the whole thing? Yeah,
No, I think it's a very natural question to come up. My guru is sitting right in front of me, so a huge reason for what we are doing, what I'm doing, is also because of him. The way we were trained in the environment, I don't even consider that as an office. And I must say, whatever I've heard from the panelists, it's absolutely fine music to my ears, because this is what we long to hear in the profession. So thank you so much for echoing these words. To me, let me take a leap over the question that you have asked and try and understand, look at the word practice. What does it mean? Does it even, is it only connected to design, or is it a philosophy? So that's where I would come from. And to me, it doesn't connect only to architecture or design. It's, I mean, all of us know that it's a philosophy. I'm going to use some Hindi words or Sanskrit words to explain it better, to answer your question. So, abhyas. Now, if you go into the etymology, it has two, it's a very powerful word. Why? Because it's nothing but it talks about paradox. Paradox of what it holds with these two words, which is abhi and yash. Now, I'm not pronouncing it correctly in Sanskrit. So, the second part talks about reaching out again and again and again till you have fine-tuned yourself, your mind, in a certain skill. You pervade into the material, you pervade into space, you pervade into form, till you feel that you've got some feel, and it might take 5 to 10 years. So this is especially to the young minds. So that's one part, where humility has to work. You have to be very humble. Now, diametrically opposite to this is the abhi part. Now, abhi comes with time. It also comes with an amazing meaning, which is to do with abhay, which is fearlessness. Now, fearlessness in design or in any other practice is what we forget. And whether you talk about cutting edge or innovation, but what the panelists were talking of, value or quality derivation, how do you essentialize something like quality? I say don't, because if you have gone through the second part diligently, You don't have to, because you lose the feel that you have to qualify yourself. You will know when it happens. But the other part, which is to come out of the box, think out of the box, that also has to become second nature. And that right now in India is not really happening. We are still quite servile to many, many ways of thinking and philosophy. So we have to really look at what we have here. And this comes from this land, what I'm talking of. So having said that, after a point, it was not really about worrying what the client will think, whether I'll be able to convince myself, because when they were talking about, or you were talking about the discussion that was happening, you go through it with flying colors the way you have trained yourself. And you will influence other people. It's very natural to happen. It's bound to follow the way a client would react or respond. Accept it with grace. Whatever happens, the project will happen or not happen anyway, is not in your control. So that's how it is.
Thank you. That was a very good answer. Now we've overshot by 5 minutes. So the last question that I want to ask are the seasoned teachers here, the seniors, Katie, Vinod, Tapan. I'm not going to ask the teachers over here. But I just want to say that this is what I have told some of my students in different institutes as well, that I am a selfish teacher because I teach because that's the only place where I get to see 40 different, at least, solutions to the same project. So I end up learning more than maybe I can help impart knowledge to my students. So I want to hear, because all of you have worked and taught simultaneously, sometimes as a full-time teacher, as in the case of Katie and even Vinod. That's how he taught me. And otherwise you have been involved in teaching, maybe as a visiting person like Anuj here or anybody. I mean, this is a very common thing. So does it help to teach? Does it make you a better designer? This is the question. What would you say? Who has the mic, please? Yeah. Give it to Vinod or whoever first.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something which I was writing about, and it was about, how we need to change school education. And I thought the design studio is a perfect model for this. Because a design studio is an interactive space where the teacher is not just a teacher, he is also a learner. And students learn not from teachers, but they learn from each other. So if we can bring this into school education, we would change the face of what students achieve in this thing. So I think that I learned a lot when I was teaching, and you were part of a batch, where this learning was very, very positive. I remember that. So it always helps the teacher to see and deal with so many different students. It's very nice, actually.
Thank you. And thank you for saying that we were a batch that you still consider in any manner.
Yes, yes.
So would Katie like to say something?
I actually first began to teach only after 14 years of work, of practice. And now when I look back, subsequently I have worked for 40 years, taught for 40 years, taught and practiced. So it's altogether about 55 years time span. I didn't work in any office. I kick-started. As soon as I finished the program, I was running my office. But it was in another century. The environment was very different.
Yeah.
My idea was that if anyone else can do it, I can also do it. And I did it. Yeah? So after 4 years of practice, I came to do a master's program. So basically, it's after 14 years of practice and travel and all kinds of things when I felt that teaching was my calling. So I left my practice and joined teaching. And I can tell you now, when I look back, I cannot think that I could have practiced without teaching. I mean, it's just so integral to each other, because teaching transforms you in a very different way, and practice transforms you in a very different way. And in both cases, you interact with people, and it's always a collective project. Everything that we do it's not that individual genius which flows from somewhere, but it's a group of people ideating together, and then you are arriving at something. And I don't even know, you asked a question about mistakes. I don't even know what is a mistake. Everything you do will finally turn out to be correct if your process of going there was the right one. And right process changes from project to project. And we can't talk about client as one entity. We have very, very different people, and very different contexts, very different approaches. And so are you. A different person in every project. And also the people who you are working with, the way you ideate together, and the context of the site, the context of the client, everything is so different. It's never the same. And there can't be any, a pattern that you can track. There is no pattern. It's a very random thing, and it's highly pleasurable. And I think if you don't enjoy what you're doing, it's not worth doing anyway.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
if you enjoyed what you're doing, you cannot go wrong.
I think that was also what Rahul was, trying to say. But Tapan?
So, hello everybody. I'm probably the wrong person to answer any of these kinds of questions. But the way I would like to deal with the question perhaps is that I used to be very passionate in sports. So football and cricket were two games I used to like. I still limp because of that. And I can answer I can respond similar. I mean, every time in football I get the ball, I do want to go and shoot into the goal, but it's not that every time I get the ball and I run, I shoot the goal. Right? So that's the way I look at it. I mean, all my designs may not be right. I may not be always able to get huge amount of money. I may not, but I'll get back again and wait for the ball. And the whole experience, like Katie said, is because you enjoyed playing football. Similarly, when you play cricket, I mean, IPL just ended, you can't expect every opener to play in the same way. So we had somebody like Sehwag who would start hitting the ball from the first go. He sometimes would make 300 runs, and sometimes he wouldn't even make 3. Right? On the other hand, there is one person called Rahul Dravid. It's called the wall. If he's there, you never know. India will be able to get by. You also have a Dhoni. Last में आके एक ओवर में 45 रन भी बनाने हैं तो बना देगा, right? So there are different people. There are different ways. There is also something called destiny. Like the same guy can make a century and the next innings go out for a duck. So I think that I have lived my life that way. Had fun. Getting into architecture design taught me that though I come from a PCM background, I had good marks. And I learned that life isn't a formula. Occupation isn't a formula. There is no one way to start. There is no one way to sustain. There is no one way. We all are different. Destiny plays a role. You can get out for a duck. And in the midst of it, but civilization has survived. So I think that the two things that I feel about failure, which has been dumped on us, if we can get rid of that word, and therefore success. So I think that, and the other thing is that let's be honest and let's be organized. I have been teaching throughout since I finished my education. I was lucky to get as a visiting faculty member in SPA. I have been working in 2 different ways. So I had my foot in 3 different places. No, the Vaman the, no, teen world. I divided my week partly into teaching, partly working for myself, trying to get one barsati, किसी को एक टॉयलेट बनाना है, किसी को 2 कमरे ऐड करने हैं. We started with that, and also I was working with big firms, you know, SK Das and DKS and all those Mr. Menon, working on projects which are 10 kilometers long, 99 hectares on one hand and a barsati on the other, and teaching. I do not know what helped. I thought it was holistic. मैं रोटी के साथ दाल खाता हूँ कि मैं दाल के साथ रोटी खाता हूँ, ये बताना बड़ा मुश्किल है. Right? It's all together. And yes, my working in the field helped my teaching in the class. I could actually understand what a brick is. And my working in the academics helped me in the field because I could hold myself saying कि ये गलत है, मैं नहीं करूँगा. Because I also, I mean, so I think it was a good mishmash, and as long as you are happy with the mishmash, don't get into this situation that हाय मेरा क्या होगा, पहला जॉब कहाँ से आ जाएगा, आता है, आता रहा है, right? पैसे नहीं बन रहे हैं, बन जाएंगे जितना चाहिए. किसी को बहुत अच्छा बनेगा पैसा, किसी को कम बनेगा. Within any profession, there are rich architects, there are poor architects, and there are in between. There are rich doctors, there are poor doctors, they are in between. There are rich politicians and there are poor politicians and there are in between. Right? They are rich cricketers and they are poor cricketers and they are in between. Your destiny will put you wherever you are, chill. Right? You have done something wonderful. You are a privileged person who's learned and become a professional, and things can't go totally wrong. I think that that's the way I lived my life. I'm not rich, I'm not poor either, but I had fun, right? And that's the way I understand. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we've talked for long, and I guess I can see the thinning audience as well, which is an indication. So now we have the awards for the 3 categories that we have over here. Have you got the awards? Yeah.
Can I?
Yes, please.
I think some of the students had certain questions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Gauri. So, we were having a discussion about values and philosophies. So, as students who are just about to get into the industry, how do we understand ourselves and our values? Because currently when I sit down, at times I feel quite cluttered because I don't understand what kind of a professional I want to be. So how do I understand myself or my style better?
That's a difficult one.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Sorry. Take your time. You're literally just starting. Like, you don't need to know right now. Like, the world is your sandbox. Like, play, figure it out, try things out. See if you like it, try other things out, see if you like it, read, discuss things with what your peers are doing, have a conversation with people who have been practicing longer than you, see whose trajectory feels like something that you connect with. You don't have to have the answer right now. You don't even have to have the answer in 10 years if you don't want to. It's up to you. Like, there is no pressure. No one's going to ask you tomorrow when you graduate saying, what's your design philosophy? Like, it's okay.
So Gauri, may I think ma'am put it very clearly. You need to take your time. So it will come to you. Anybody else? Anybody else has a question?
Otherwise, you can always talk to them at a one-to-one level when they're seeing the exhibition. Because as I said, we have to break the suspense and declare the awards.
Thank you, sir, and our esteemed guests. We got very, invaluable insights from all of you. Like Mr. Mehta mentioned that we impact the society, we impact lives. And there is still too much to learn. Katie sir mentioned that if the process is right, you will have the right outcome. And sir mentioned there's no pattern to learning. It's always important to enjoy what you're doing. So I think it's more important that you guys are here and you're enjoying what you're doing, and in the end, you will find your way.